Good morning, and thank you for joining me for the First Alert Weather Breakdown podcast. I'm meteorologist Jake Lambright. Got several things to dive into today as far as our forecast goes for the next couple of days. Some big changes on the way as we go through the rest of this week and head into the upcoming weekend. Of course, let's start off with talking about those rain chances even beyond today as we head into Friday, maybe even early Saturday morning. We've got the chance for at least a little bit of rain. Let's talk future track on Friday. You'll notice, actually go back here a little bit. We'll start off with Friday morning. This is around 10 a.m. or so. You'll notice those little spotty showers starting to make their way in from the south. By 1, 2 p.m., you'll notice those showers as far north as the I-20 corridor, and we'll actually continue to see that rain as far north as I-30 heading into parts of Friday night and early Saturday morning. Now, what you see there on future track, isn't that all? Isn't really impressive whenever it comes to potential rainfall totals across the area. We're talking maybe a tenth of an inch to a quarter of an inch. Best case scenario, half an inch. Again, not really going to see much in the way of any rainfall out of this weather maker. However, we will see cooler temperatures, and you'll feel that across much of the Arklatex. In fact, here's a look at your temperatures as we head into Monday morning. I'm expecting us to start off in the mid-30s across a lot of the area. Now, the afternoon is going to be a lot cooler as well. Here's a snapshot temperatures Monday around 2, maybe 3 p.m., and you'll see we're topping out in here I think it's a little bit cooler than we'll actually be, but upper 50s across a good chunk of the Arklatex. And yes, again, those are high temperatures on Monday afternoon. We have a kind of a copy and paste forecast Sunday night and Monday night. So Tuesday morning, you're waking up to temperatures in the mid-30s again for much of the Arklatex. If you're north of I-20, you could see some lower 30s in there as well. So kind of a light freeze there into Queen. The possibility of upper 20s cannot be entirely ruled out. So the big takeaway here when it comes to temperatures is Sunday night and Monday night, people, pets, and plants need to be indoors as we will be seeing at least widespread frost across the Arklatex. With that said, after the sun rises Tuesday, we warm up above 36, 37 degrees. You can take your plants back outside. You won't have to worry about them likely for the next 10 to 12 days. I mean, we're going to be warming up, and we will be warming up fast. In fact, here's your temperature trend over the next week. Again, we're going to be in the mid-80s this afternoon for afternoon highs. From there, we're in the upper 60s for Friday. We keep it in the 60s through Sunday. A brief return to 50s for your afternoon highs starting on Monday, and then from there, temps climb very quickly. 60s there for Tuesday, 70s closer to 80 degrees for your high temperature as we head into Wednesday. Speaking of, we will see some breezier conditions as we go throughout parts of Friday. I want to show you that here on Future Track. We could continue to see wind gusts up to 15, maybe 20 miles per hour at times as we go through a good chunk of your Friday. So I want to give you the first alert to that. And another thing I want to talk about, two things I want to talk about real quick before we dive into the Barksdale Bubble. One of them being hummingbird migration. Both of these are in March. Hummingbird migration, we've already seen a couple along the Gulf Coast. They will peak here in the Arklatex during the second half of March, so March 15th through the 30th. Something that happens earlier on in the month, actually here in just a couple weeks, is our next total lunar eclipse. And as long as we don't have rain or cloud cover, we will be able to see this right here in the Arklatex. The maximum eclipse will be 5:04 a.m. the morning of Tuesday, March 3rd. I actually talked about this a little more in depth last week on the First Alert Weather Breakdown podcast. You can check out that episode on demand over on your Roku, Fire TV, or Apple TV device on the free KSLA News 12 Now app. All right, the Barksdale Bubble. We talk about it all the time. I love to joke about it. Is it real or is it a myth? We will talk about if any tornadoes have tracked through the Barksdale area, the Barksdale Air Force Base in recent years. That's coming up right after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Of course, we talk about the Barksdale Bubble here across the Arklatex all the time. I love to joke about it myself. Someone recently asked me about it, and so I thought I'd take some time to explain today if the Barksdale Bubble is real or not. So I want to start off, I'm going to put a graphic here on the screen and talk a little bit about some limitations with radar. So here's a look at kind of an example image of what the radar looks like, and of course, the beam that scans the sky. Now, here's the tricky part. As you go further away from the radar, that beam scans higher and higher in the atmosphere due to the curvature of the Earth. So sometimes you'll look at radar and notice how across Shreveport-Bossier and out towards Barksdale, it looks like there's a big hole. It looks like we're not seeing any kind of rain at all, when in reality, even areas a little bit further away may also not be seeing rain, but that radar beam scanning high enough in the atmosphere to where there is rain falling, it's just not reaching the ground. Sometimes we can have some dry air in place a few thousand feet, or from the ground to a few thousand feet up, and so that rain can have a good bit of time to evaporate. Now, there are also some more interesting components as well. I did some research and found that in recent years, there have been 4 different tornadoes that have either touched down and moved through Barksdale Air Force Base itself, or there's one long track tornado that was very close to Barksdale but did not actually move through Barksdale. So I want to show you those tornado tracks and also talk a little bit about the details with that as well. All right, here's a look at our first tornado track. This was April 14th, 2018. I want to read off some of the details from that tornado for you. It had a length, this was a longer track tornado of 23 miles, and it had a max width of 1,100 feet. Now, with that said, this was an EF1 tornado. It had maximum winds of 110 miles per hour. And you'll notice, I'll actually zoom in on the map here. I'm going to point out where Barksdale is on the map specifically. Here's Barksdale right in here. So you'll notice that that tornado track, or that green line, never actually went through Barksdale, but it was close enough, and it was a bit of a longer track tornado. So I wanted to include it here in our count. Here are some official details from the National Weather Service's storm survey. So the tornado initially touched down just west of 3132 along Dixie Boulevard, and it started by uprooting some trees. It continued down 3132, broke off some larger branches, and then that tornado tracked very close to the National Weather Service office here in Shreveport, which is near I-20 and I-220. So this was also very, very close to Shreveport Regional as well. So the tornado did some roof damage to 3 different hotels near the Monkhouse Drive exit along I-20. And then it paralleled I-20, continued uprooting trees and damaging billboard signs, and then it shifted to the north and northeast, crossing Joella Avenue, where it did significant damage to some trees. It did grow to about 800 yards wide, and it ended up snapping and uprooting some trees along parts of Hearn Avenue and Lakeshore Drive. It continued into downtown Shreveport and caused some sporadic tree damage before it eventually crossed the Red River and moved into downtown Bossier City. It broke some larger tree branches near Bossier High School and I-20, and then it strengthened near the heart of Bossier Shopping Center and Benton Road, where it ended up uprooting several trees as it headed toward Pier Bossier Mall. Now, from there, it uprooted or snapped several trees around the south side of the mall and I-20, and it knocked down the top half of the east-facing wall of a strip mall near the north side of Pier Bossier Mall. So that tornado continued on out toward the Red Chute area. It knocked a large tree down onto a travel trailer, which unfortunately did kill a 2-year-old infant. The tornado did considerable tree damage as it crossed Bellevue Road just north of Highway 80, and it continued doing a lot of damage, mainly to trees, and continued on with significant tree damage into the northern section of the Country Place subdivision near Eastwood. It did continue causing more damage to trees as it crossed into the community of Princeton, just west of Princeton Elementary School, and then lifted near Highway 157. So that was Tornado 1. That's the one that didn't quite cross over Barksdale. Sorry, that was a bit of a lengthy discussion there, storm survey there from the Weather Service, but wanted to touch on that. Then this second tornado here, this one's actually from January 11th of 2020. This one touched down near Barksdale Air Force Base, or just south of the base. And this was also kind of a longer track tornado as well. This tornado tracked from Bossier Parish, I believe that's Claiborne Parish. I'll have to zoom out there and double check that here in just a moment. But this tornado tracked for 40 miles. In fact, tracked 40.6 miles to be exact, and reached a max width, see if I can get that info back up, of 300 yards. It did, unfortunately, there were 3 fatalities with this tornado, and this one was actually a little bit stronger. This one maxed out at EF2 strength, had maximum winds of around 135 miles per hour. So as I mentioned before, this tornado touched down in Bossier Parish and continued on into Claiborne Parish. That's wherever it lifted, a little bit north there of Interstate 20. Let's talk about some of the details with this damage survey as well. This one a lot shorter. So again, it touched down just south of Barksdale Air Force Base in southern Bossier Parish, and it initially snapped and uprooted hundreds of both softwood and hardwood trees and damaged several cars or carports and outbuildings. The tornado crossed the far southeast corner of Barksdale Air Force Base, which the details from that part of the base did not make this survey or this official survey report. But after the tornado exited the corner of the southeast corner of Barksdale, it strengthened into that EF2 strength tornado, and it produced its greatest damage. It completely destroyed a single wide manufactured home and a double wide manufactured home off of Davis Road. 2 fatalities occurred in the double wide and another in the single wide home. The storm continued on to produce roof damage and uproot and snap trees that fell into homes in southeastern Bossier Parish. The tornado then crossed into Webster Parish, where it damaged a metal barn structure, the roof of a home, and destroyed a shed before crossing I-20. Exits, looks like that was not filled in there, but it did cross I-20, and just before the storm crossed I-20, it developed a much wider swath of damaging straight-line winds with the rear flank of the storm just south of the tornado damage. After crossing I-20, the tornado went on to roll a single wide trailer and damage roofs on 2 structures before crossing into Claiborne Parish. The tornado touched down intermittently throughout much of southern Claiborne Parish, producing partial roof damage on roughly half a dozen chicken houses and partial roof damage to several other structures. Through the path, there were multiple trees that fell on homes, producing damage. Structural damage could not be rated, though, as it was a result of other objects falling onto the homes and not a direct impact from the tornado itself. In addition to the EF2 tornado, there were widespread straight-line winds that were estimated at 90 to 100 miles per hour along the path of the tornado that also led to damage, causing a lot of extensive tree damage along the path. So again, that tornado number 2, this was January 2020, touched down on the south side of Barksdale Air Force Base. Let me turn this down here real quick. So then on to tornado number 3. Pull that up here on the map real quick. This one also touched down right in the heart of Barksdale Air Force Base. Let's see if I can get that to load there. So I'll kind of circle the area that Barksdale's in for reference on this tornado track. And this was April 12th of 2022. Here's Barksdale Air Force Base right here, kind of in that general vicinity. So this tornado was an EF0. So this one on the weaker side had maximum winds of around 85 miles per hour. And this tornado, if you recall, last weekend we had that kind of squall line of storms that prompted a couple tornado warnings. And those tornadoes were very quick to spin up and very quick to dissipate. This was one of those types of system, what we call a QLCS line of storms, originally touched down near Sophia Lane and Brunswick Drive in Shreveport. Large branches, hardwood and softwood trees were broken and twisted off the trees, and then the tornado continued on and damaged a food stand as it crossed parts of Uri Drive. The tornado continued to do mostly damage to large branches. It did uproot a couple of trees and cause some minor shingle damage to single-family homes in a neighborhood adjacent to LSU Shreveport. It brought damage to the soccer and baseball fields at LSUS before crossing East Harts Island Road and the Red River. So once the tornado crossed the Red River and Bossier Parish, it continued to uproot more trees and twist large tree branches. It uprooted trees which split at least 3 manufactured homes off of Alfred Lane as they fell and damaged several others. The tornado then continued on to General Ewell Drive and then continued to move toward a forested area on the Barksdale Air Force Base itself. Barksdale personnel relayed that trees were uprooted and large branches were broken via pictures as the tornado crossed the southern and eastern forested parts of the base. Now, beyond Barksdale, only thunderstorm wind damage was found off of Union, Texas Road and Academy Lane by Houghton Elementary School. And the National Weather Service gives a special thanks to Barksdale LSUS Police, the Caddo Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, and Bossier Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness for their assistance in locating damage along the survey. So again, that's tornado 3 out of 4. Technically, the second one, the first one I mentioned, did not directly impact Barksdale, but this EF0 tornado did move through parts of base. So that leaves us with one last tornado that did directly impact the Barksdale Air Force Base. Get that track to load in there. And this was a longer track tornado, more specifically an EF2 tornado that moved through during Hurricane Beryl. So I'm going to make that full screen. This here is kind of a lengthier storm survey. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it the best that I can. So again, the track, they did a lot of updating with this track, but this was an EF2 tornado. It first touched down in northern Red River Parish, west of Highway 71. So this was one of those tornadoes that tracked south to north across the Arklatex. From there, the damage in Red River Parish consisted of several trees that were snapped or uprooted. Structural damage was very minor to moderate and mainly consisted of fallen trees or limbs that were downed on structures. Now, the storm path was persistent through the Loggy Bayou Wildlife Management Area and traveled northwest, where the storm eventually crossed Highway 154. This was east of Elm Grove, Louisiana. The tornado damage became pretty sporadic west of Highway 154, but an intense burst of tree damage was observed on Robinson Road. The storm did continue north and west, paralleled Highway 157 until the storm crossed Highway 527. Extensive damage was observed to some structures from fallen trees along Sligo Road. This is closer to the Barksdale area. Before the storm entered the southeast corner of Barksdale Air Force Base, that tornado continued on with up to lower end EF1 strength across eastern portions of Barksdale Air Force Base before continuing north across Interstate 20 and Highway 79 west of Houghton, where several trees were snapped and or uprooted, damaging some structures along with power poles that were also snapped and a couple power lines that were down as well. Damage was extensive on Wafer Road and Cindy Lane, and then the storm continued on a northwestern trajectory, back with extensive damage again to structures from fallen trees on Bellevue and surrounding roads. This tornado continued northwest. It caused extensive damage along East Linton Road, Crouch Road, and Linton Bellevue roads, where several structures received storm damage from fallen trees. Unfortunately, there was one fatality reported on East Linton Road from this tornado, where a tree fell on a mobile home that killed a 30-year-old and injured her 2 children. A tornado nearly paralleled Crouch Road before crossing Highway 162. That was east of the Cypress Bayou Reservoir. More tree and power line damage was observed on Old Plain Dealing Road before the tornado lifted just west of Highway 2, or just north of Highway 2, west of Plain Dealing. So again, this is the third tornado that directly impacted Barksdale, and the fourth tornado, again, the first one that I mentioned was very, very close to Barksdale. It was a longer track tornado. So again, just proof here in the last 8 years alone that the Barksdale Bubble, unfortunately, is just a myth across the Arklatex. Again, sometimes the Barksdale area is pretty lucky in dodging severe storms. I know with the recent winter storm, we saw, of course, some sleet across Shreveport, Bossier, and Barksdale. We got to miss a lot of the freezing rain and some of the more significant impacts that were found across parts of DeSoto and Red River Parish into our northeast out toward the Monroe area. But again, the Barksdale Bubble, unfortunately, just a myth, and we can see severe weather and winter weather on the Barksdale Air Force Base itself and in the immediate vicinity surrounding Barksdale here across the Shreveport-Bossier Metro. All right, that's going to do it for us on the First Alert Weather Breakdown podcast. I'll be right back here tomorrow at 10:30, so make sure that you tune in for that. I will see you all bright and early tomorrow morning.